listen to this.
Baloney. You won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
I can't hear you.
Of course, microphones are going to be muted tonight because things are already acting strange. I appreciate you joining me tonight. I was just reminding listeners that, listen, you can put me in the most haunted of houses. You can send me off to the most weird and unbelievable dark spots on the planet to face off against demons. But sending me outdoors is not my place, Les. I'm going to be more than happy to let you continue to teach people how to survive in those elements, because I am not built for that kind of stuff. But I'm glad that you are.
Thank you kindly for leaving that to me. And you know what? I am. I think often gosh, sometimes I think I used to even surprise myself. I've just never not been super comfortable out in the remote wilderness by myself or with groups, in the dark or in the daylight. It just, in the storms or in the calm, it doesn't matter. I just am never not comfortable out there. You know, it's definitely my place.
See, I think mine stems from my grandparents owned 40 acres in Foley, Alabama, and only 10 of it was livable. The rest was just crazy wilds. And that's where I had my Bigfoot experience when I was about 12 years old. My cousin and I were sitting fishing in the pond that my grandfather kept stocked with fish, and we could hear something huge stomping around out there. But again, being that young, Bigfoot was not really part of my lexicon at that point. I had no idea, but we kept hearing it getting closer and closer, and we could tell it was back by the end of the pond, when suddenly one of the big, tall bushes, this hairy hand came up over the top of the bush and pushed it down. We could see from the tip of the nose up, and it was a dark inset face with this kind of darkish gray mane, I would say. And it just stared at my cousin and I. We turned and looked at each other, looked back at this thing, and turned around and Scooby-Dooed it right back up to the house, half expecting we're going to get up there and find out it's one of our idiot fathers wearing a gorilla mask trying to scare us. When they saw how unnerved we were, everybody grabbed rifles and they were off into the woods. They never uncovered anything. But again, they weren't going out there looking in the mud for giant footprints either. But after that, I became very aware of my surroundings and how many times I would be sitting there on the little cross bridge and look over and suddenly realize I'm 2 feet away from a water moccasin or some other creepy creature that I really should be nowhere near as a 10 to 14-year-old boy. So that's probably just deeply ingrained itself into my psyche. But I've loved the show Survivor Man. I've loved watching what you do. I can live recklessly through watching you do all of these things, and I can be warm with my favorite Bigfoot slippers on, sipping hot cocoa and watching you brave the elements. But man, when you jumped after the chance to go and look into Bigfoot with the Survivor Man 10-part series, I knew this was the guy I wanted to talk to. And the fact that you have a new program that you're working on, and you've got a Kickstarter, and we do have a link for the Kickstarter on today's program guide. We've also got a link so you can go right to Les's website and learn more about him, find out about the projects and places he'll be. But I want to chat with you because so many of the episodes you talk about the fact that you're not really a believer, but it's not like you don't believe either. You've been out there and have had weird experiences without seeing anything, but you'd had enough experiences that something was making you question. What type of experiences were you having out in the woods that would alert you that maybe you weren't alone and it wasn't just your typical bear, wolf, or coyote?
Well, I think in many ways it's like a, you get to this. See, you had a one-time very specific incident, maybe others as well, but that specific one that you certainly remember well enough to tell the story right now, and it definitely left an indelible mark on you. But a lot of other times, I think what happens with individuals out there, at least has happened with me, is you get a collective of varying experiences that you can't quite put your finger on. Your natural history, skill, and experience say, well, that's not a wolf, that's not a moose, that's not a bear, but you can't quite put your finger on it. But then you have years pass, and then you have another one, and years pass, then you have another one, and sometimes you go, oh, wait a minute, that could have easily been a couple of cougars fighting. That could have been some raccoon or some porcupines because they make the weirdest sounds and so on. And over my life, there's been a series of some strange occurrences while I've been out in the wild, including, at times, at least one where I thought the thought, well, do you think that was a Bigfoot? Like, I don't know what else it could have been, given where we are and what it sounded like and so on. Those things developed. And but I suppose the tipping point for me was I was in Alaska, and I was doing a Survivor Man Alaska program. And what's interesting is that the day before this happened, I was at a creek, and I had the thickest, most profound of creepiest feelings of being watched. Most people can relate to that. I felt like I was being watched, and I turned and there was this creep in the cafe staring at me. Most of us can relate to that feeling. And I had that feeling in the middle of nowhere in Alaska with nobody else around. It was very strong. That went by that day. The next day is when I had this situation where I had this thing up in a tree that sounded, for all intent and purposes, like a great, silverback gorilla or some sort of great ape. But I'm in Alaska. There ain't no apes in Alaska. And what that did was, I had that experience. What's interesting, Dave, is, for me anyway, is that I said nothing of it. And the reason I said nothing of it was because at that time I was really peaking with Survivor Man. I was rocking that world, and I didn't want to interrupt or distract from that world of being Survivor Man and filming the shows and teaching the skills and doing that thing. And I thought, if I say the word Bigfoot, people are going to lose their minds, and they're going to be all focused on that. So I just never said anything. And then one day I was on a radio, doing a radio interview, and it was a rock jock kind of jokey kind of show sort of thing. And so, hey man, you ever seen Bigfoot? And I never not answered pointedly and truthfully. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, and then I tell this story of when I was in Alaska and the grunting in the tree, and I imitate it and everything. Well, I got so much fanfare after that, and I thought, maybe I should do something about this. Well, shortly after that, the show Finding Bigfoot went on television. And for me, I'm a big fan of Cliff's. I love Cliff. I think he's a smart man, and I've really enjoyed the two, I think, conversations I've had with him. Really enjoyable individual. However, I hated the show. I thought the town halls were great, but I thought the show was ridiculous and stupid, and I know that it was all staged and set up and just play acting at the side of a parking lot. That drove me nuts. And normally I try to create things that are my own creations, but once in a while I'll take a page from Richard Branson and try to make a better mousetrap. And that was this case. This was like, you know what? They're making a mockery of what could be a very, very cool phenomenon to research, and it's being made fun of here. And it became a cultural punchline because of that show. And so I thought, no, I can do this better. I can do this with some skepticism, a little dash of cynicism, professionalism, and without drinking any Kool-Aid, and wanted to create Survivor Man Bigfoot. And that's what it all sort of, over the times. And then, of course, a ton of experiences while doing Survivor Man Bigfoot. But that's what started it all, was that sort of reaction.
Well, I've got to say, honestly, I love the fact that even watching you on Survivor Man, you're a badass. The things that you're able to do and teach and show people are phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I loved that during the Bigfoot, you weren't posturing. There was none of this, what was that? I heard a sound, and there was, you could tell there were moments of real concern that crossed your face, which I know you've had before when you realize you're near grizzly bear area or black bears or other creatures that are aggressive. And you're always hyper aware, but I love the fact that there was none of this fake bravado, and you were taking it very seriously. You were taking the land seriously. You were taking the myth, the legend, the stories that your guides would tell you, and the experiences with a certain form of reverence. And in one of the bits, you'd set audio recorders up in like 4 different perimeters, and you heard, I think it was a tree get knocked or hit down, and you turn to the camera, you go, well, now I got to go check the audio right where it came from. And you could just see that look on your face of, oh, what am I in for? And making that move. So I really appreciate that you've shown that kind of empathy and respect for this and taking it seriously and remaining skeptical. But I love watching how you'll tell yourself, I gotta stop for a second, because I'm getting in my own head. I'm starting to, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I've seen too many shows, heard too many things. I've got to reset. And I thought that was a really excellent bit that I hope that Bigfooters and the weekend clubbers that are out there doing this take a page from, because instead of immediately jumping to its Bigfoot, instead of immediately rushing into an area or running away from it, you stood your ground, you let things unfold and happen as they would in nature. And I thought that was phenomenal.
Well, I mean, yeah, the making a comical show out of it, the whole, that's a squatch. It's feeling very squatchy here. All of that stuff, just, it's not my thing. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I don't make reality television. A lot of those shows they were spinning in the world of reality TV. I don't do that. And, and much to the chagrin of networks, I live in that world of trying to do something earnestly. And they hate that. And I don't care, and you're right. I mean, the thing is, if you're trying to, let's say I'm trying to explain this to my wife, and she's a doctor, she's a scientist, and I couldn't do it to her in some sort of melodramatic kind of way. I need to speak with her in a way, that is, how do I say, smart, articulate, critical thinking oriented, professional. I mean, as I said, she's a doctor. So as if we were discussing a treatment for cancer, in that same tone is the way I say, well, think about this. And then I start talking about the attributes of Bigfoot or the possibilities or the experiences. I think it's touching on what you said when you say you hope that Bigfooters out there and researchers, well, a lot of these people now are even trying to make money on it by running courses and so on. But if you're going to do that, you're going to leave a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth if you go out there with this melodrama. It's just not my style. And here's the thing. When you aren't being melodramatic about it and something sensational does happen, now it really means something. And right. I'm remembering what you're talking about. That was in Clem 2. It was on the edge of the lake. And if you watch that episode, here's a trick with me. You can see me talking to the camera, and you can see me breathing with my mouth open, like this. I do that when I'm nervous. Mm-hmm. And you can see me doing that because I was like, okay, right. This isn't that. Hang on. And my mind is going through like all the possibilities, how, and again, not trying to drink my own Kool-Aid in this matter, not get caught up in my own head and think, well, it's got to be a squatch. Like, no, but then again, I can't explain that. And even if it is just a grizzly, well, still, I better be worried or nervous right now. And you can see that in that episode. And as I said, in the end, you don't have to manufacture drama. And when you don't, and something truly dramatic happens, it's quite special. It's real.
I've had people throughout my career talk to me about, well, Dave, let me take you out. I want to take you out to a known area. And I've tongue in cheek said it, but I've always waited for an answer. And I've said, well, okay, Les, you take me out to this area. And what happens when we encounter one? What is the plan? And then they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you don't bring guns or rifles because you don't believe sidearms, and you don't want to, the Bigfoot's going to know you have that. We are maybe going to come across an 8 to 10 foot tall bipedal hairy hominid that can just reach up and bend trees, twist dogs in half. What is our plan of action if we find one? And to this point, I still do not have anybody that's given me a course of action because it's, what do you now? You've got the bear spray on the hip, you've got your knife, and you're pretty clear about the fact this is really all I've got to go on, which I respect. But I'm curious, Les, if you hear something and you start to approach and realize it's there, and it starts to, even if it's like gorillas do, that kind of, rush you to try to just spook you off. What is your plan in that moment and in that instant?
Well, in some ways, I can turn to my skill and experience with natural history. I often will try to help people to understand they don't need to be afraid of a cougar, a mountain lion, or a bear, a black bear, or a grizzly bear. And, for example, in my neighborhood in Ontario, I'll see a quick email. Hey, everybody, there's a black bear. John saw a black bear out on the trail. And I'm just like, oh God, by the time you sent this email, the bear's in the other county, for goodness sakes. And you're creating this fear that shouldn't even be there. And I will often now go on and say, everybody, listen. And then I'll give them tips, and so then I go back to this. What I'm talking about is you learn skills about how to be around wildlife. For example, if you're dealing with cats, you stare them, you keep your eyes on a cat. Cats don't like that. They want to attack you from behind. Same thing is true for sharks. Sharks want to come from behind. So you're always, they got to keep that eyes. That's why in India, they wear clown masks on the back of their head if they're walking through the jungle, because it freaks the tiger out. With bears, it's the other way around. You don't look a bear straight in the eyes. It's a challenge to a canine to stare them straight in the eye. Certainly a wild canine. And so I first resort to this innate sense, if you will, that I've always feel I've had, is you're trying to truly read the room, as it were, gauge the impression, the vibe. I talked earlier about that feeling of being watched, or let's say the hair is going up on the back of your neck. These are signals to us as biological beings of something is dangerous or something's not dangerous, and I would utilize that. At first I go straight to that. But what are we talking about here? We're not talking about something that we can pick up a book and say, what are the attack habits of the North American brown grizzly bear? We can't do that with Sasquatch. By the way, you can do that with bears, and do it with Stephen Herrero's the bear attacks, their causes and avoidances, something like that. Great book to learn how to be in wild territory with bears. So with Sasquatch, I've thought about this, what if and what do I? And I don't want to sound wooey about this, that's for sure. But I have a feeling, and that's all I got on this one, because there ain't no books to read, that it comes down to, in essence, reading the moment, reading the room, reading the vibe, feeling the vibe, I think the magic of being in nature is that all of your senses come into play all at once, and they all happen all at once. Smell, everything, right? And if you pay attention to those instincts, which not enough people do, but you start to learn to, and you're faced with this crazy situation of a species you know nothing about, that is rumored to potentially be possibly dangerous, is rumored to be potentially possibly benevolent. Well, you've got a moment to read, don't you? So what are you going to do? Now you look at the logistics of it. Can you escape? Well, maybe you should back away and just get out of range. You cannot escape? Okay, maybe you need to remain calm and gentle and sedate and try to be in some kind of protective situation. You can't find that? Maybe it's a matter of breathing deep, relaxing, and submitting. I've had 650-pound grizzly bears 3 feet away from me wanting to sniff me. And I survived that, if you will, by, okay. And I used my voice. This wasn't a trained grizzly bear, but I used my voice, and it worked in terms of, hey, it's okay. That's enough. And I watched the bear go almost like dejected, like, oh, and turn. Well, these would be my suggestions when it comes to something such as a Sasquatch, because again, we don't know, Dave. You don't know. I don't know. Nobody's written a book on this, and those that have still don't know what they're talking about. So,
right.
How to react? It's a long way. You know what? It's a great question, Dave. I've never been asked that question before. What do you do? And this would be my answer. And in the end, put my head between my legs and kiss my ass goodbye if I have to. But it's really a matter of, I think, calming and being calm and trusted. I have been in cougar territory, wolf territory, bear territory, grizzlies. I've had wolves come up and sniff me at night while I slept. I'm not saying I'm anything special, and certainly you can take this way too far. Like what's that guy, Timothy Treadwell, Grizzly Man, and you can get killed tragically because you push it too far. And I wouldn't want to push a 10-foot beast that we know nothing about that could decapitate me with one arm too far. And in the end, it's a big fat I don't know, but I also don't want to be as unprepared as what you suggested with other people you've talked to. I think this is what you have to do. You bring in all your senses into it and all your memory and skills of dealing with the natural world.
Yeah, that has been key to me, as I've just been curious, what is the thought? And even on the show, when I've interviewed people that have been out there in the field, they kind of laugh it off and don't give me a straight answer of, well, I'm going to do this or submit. And, like, again, you're kind of on that same vein. I like to think you just try to listen, this is going to go one of two ways. So I can just watch it and try to remain calm and see if I can get through this experience, or thrash about and end up a meal for the day. I'd rather just kind of be in that moment. Maybe that's the good time, kind of Jurassic Parky, when you keep an eye on it and reach into the bag and start putting the apples out in front of you, right? To let them know, hey, look what I got for you. And, just trying to make nice with something. And again, we're hoping that it does appear to be much more sentient and intelligent than most of the base animals, which also sounds weird because animals are extremely smart. And there are times, as I'm sure you could be walking through the woods and be 5 feet away from a bear and not even realize it till it wants you to know that it's right.
I have a thing about being in the wilderness that I love to say, and that is no matter what, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you are always being watched constantly. It might be just the spider over there on that limb, but something is watching you intently. Birds, snakes, grasshoppers, bears, cougars, everything. There's always something watching you. It's a guarantee. Where we can go as well as the other angle, which I think is, it's just a big fat whatever, and that's the machismo. Well, I gotta take my AK-47 with me, and I'm gonna shoot those things, and I got no time for that. But again, do I know what I'm doing? I don't. Am I taking a chance? I am. Is it worth it? Not if I get killed, it ain't. If I don't, then it was worth it.
I'll tease you with a question here before we go to break, and we'll come back and revisit with that. If it came down to you or it, and this is the proof you need to show that these exist, and in order to protect this area, you have to bring back a body, would Les Stroud take the creature down? We'll talk about that when we return. We'll be back right after this.
Did you know that radio just got a little extraterrestrial? That's right, Dave Schrader is back on radio with the Paranormal 360 every Sunday evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Just download the Odyssey app and look for the WCCO logo, follow the station, and listen live. That's the Paranormal 360 on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you to PJ Thompson for the $20 super sticker. We appreciate that. Thank you for tuning in and watching and being part of the live audience as well. So Les, they say the only way science is going to take this seriously is when we can present them a living or dead version of this creature. Given that opportunity, would you take its life in order to perhaps save the species overall?
So there's 3 layers to I think to my answer. Let's no particular reason, but let's do it in a bit of a chronological order. There have been bodies. So, varying stories over time, this story, that story, this story, that story, I believe that there have been captured and bodies. And yet doesn't seem to be anywhere that we can read about it. You have to really search, and you find lots of, references here and there. So there's that. It's like, have they ever been hit by cars? Well, actually, yeah. There's not one. There's many occurrences of having them been hit by a car, and then this happens or that happens, whether it be they get up and run away, or, guys from the government show up instantaneously or whatever happens. So there's that. Number two is, that leads to the point of shooting one to bring it in. I am not and won't ever be a Bigfoot hunter. I'm a meat eater, don't get me wrong, and I'm not a hypocrite. And my favorite meat to eat is always going to be wild meat. I rarely buy farmed meat anymore. Elk and so on, I love it, But this is not that. And I have zero desire to prove my manhood by shooting a Sasquatch. I just feel it's much more powerful and more important than that. I think that's reckless and a play on machismo, and it's not necessary. And that leads to the third layer of the question. And that is about bringing it so that it is proven to the world. I can tell you that in spite of my obvious interest in the phenomenon, which is, as a documentary filmmaker and because of my experiences, in spite of that, the last thing I would want to be is the guy who made it real for the world, because my life would be over in that moment. That's all you would ever be. It's all you would ever be known about and for. You'd never escape it. And that's not me. I have a wife and I have children and I have music to write and books to write and films to make. And I do love this phenomenon and I do love the work that I do within it. But I don't want to be that guy. That can be the Todd Standings if they want it to be. That could be a Jeff Meldrum or a Stacey Brown Jr. And I don't get me wrong. I love Stacey and highly respect Jeff Meldrum. That can be our friend Tim Halloran from the Bigfoot Answers. It can be anybody else who's in this world. I don't want it to be me. So that it is an emphatic no. I would rather, what it would be for me? It would be, and there are many people watching this that are lucky enough to have this. It would be that immense satisfaction of being able to say, I know what I saw. And I was not drunk, and I was not high, and I was not dehydrated, and I was not tired, and I was not hallucinating, and I am not delusional. I know what I saw, and I know my bears from my wolves. This was that. And that would be enough for me. And I would continue to tell the story. I mean, I would tell the story. I would go into emphatic detail with it. I'd go back on Joe Rogan and say, I'm going to tell you the story. But would I shoot one just so I could prove it? Not ever. I think that's reckless.
So as a documentarian, again, you want to tell the story. You want to share the history, the folklore, give people a chance to look at the stories that exist, the things that have been done, the pieces that have been collected, and put the puzzle together themselves. But if you came and I said to you, Les, listen, I know you're filming this episode in Minnesota. I can take you to a location, just you and me, but you can't bring your cameras. We are going to have a Bigfoot encounter. But you cannot videotape and you cannot audio record, but this will give you the definitive answer you want. Is that something that you would be interested in doing, knowing it's not going to benefit you as a documentarian in any way other than becoming anecdotal stories?
Well, yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what I do. I mean, it's not like when Survivor Man, Bigfoot, the series finished that I just stopped. Mm-hmm. I continued to have experiences, some of them very profound, some of them and many more outside of making that series. So that, to indicate my profound interest in this phenomenon, absolutely. And the funny thing is that I believe that that's how you actually, in a way, have the more profound and significant experiences, when you are not manning a camera, not setting up trail cams, not putting out pheromone things and hair catching devices and all of that stuff. You really and truly, like, my real and true experiences have been when I've just been out there. And funnily enough, sometimes they've happened. It's annoying that they happen then, because I've got an experience that I'll talk about probably in this film, that when I took out, I filmed a Survivor Man episode with a fellow named Joseph McConnell, and it was like a fan episode. He won the opportunity to come out with me. He and I both had these crazy ass experiences the one night. We did not talk about it. And in many ways, it's like, well, not now. I'm filming Survivor Man over here. You almost want to do that, you know? And at my own cabin in Temagami, Ontario, you know, some experiences of out there were over the top. And I think there's, in many ways, this is an interesting, I love the way you're taking this conversation, because it doesn't usually go this way, because it's almost like the philosophy of, do we let people know or don't we? And I am, let me go here. I'm of mixed emotions as far as the exposing, shall we say, of this phenomenon to a point where the world all goes, we know they're there. Why is that? One, it's going to bring out all the crazies. So every big game hunter across the globe is going to want to come to this valley in the Northwest Pacific coast to hunt down what's been proven to exist. Number two, what's this going to mean in terms of, like, on the good side of it, you're going to have people say, we need to protect this valley. You know, we got to close it off from mining and logging because look, it's been proven. And then that's going to spread out. I like that part.
Right.
But the crazies are going to come out, and there's enough of the crazies, enough money out there to do some real damage. I mean, you know, we're proven to be a species that is very good at making other species go extinct. And I just think that full and total exposure to the world would be the death blow. I'm not even sure it's possible with this entity species phenomenon, but if it is possible, I think it would deliver a death blow. I don't want to be responsible for that. The experiences I've had have never been malevolent. They've all touched me in an emotional and spiritual, in a positive way. So I don't have something like, that there's a fear there. Is that, well, I need to see one stuffed, you know? And so, like I say, it's an interesting question, because it leads us to mixed emotions about, it's not about can we, it's about should we. And I'm not sure. Where do you sit with that? Let me ask you, and I bet you don't get a lot of questions thrown back. Let me throw that one back at you. Where do you think it should be exposed, or do you have mixed emotions? Where are you with it?
Listen, like most of us, right? I grew up watching shows like Sightings and In Search Of, and I love it. And I remember once it turned on for me as a kid, I wanted to read everything I could about it. I want to see it. I saw something when I was 12 that as an adult, I can look back at and say, were you looking at a homeless person in the woods and they just were unkempt and dirty and looked? But I remember the hair over the top of the hand. I remember, but am I putting that on there? Was it tattered clothing? And I was at a far enough distance. I was a good 50 yards away that I could have misrepresented what I saw or misinterpreted it. And as children, we just reacted thinking it was a bear or a gorilla or something in the woods. And we took off, not logically trying to make sense of it. I've thought, okay, I understand why the government might hide aliens from us, because they can't protect us. They can't say, don't worry, you're never going to be in any danger. So I understand kind of painting us in that corner. But Bigfoot to me was always this, why hide Bigfoot, government? And then I thought, because we are predatorial.
Well, and I want to interject here.
Sure.
Follow the money.
Right.
No,
well, you're right. Obviously, we start interfering with the logging industry, the mining industry, all of these different things. But maybe I'm trying to give one lean to the good of the government side, is that they already have hard enough time with jackasses out there killing animals that are protected now, that they don't have enough game wardens. Like you said, everybody's going to come out of every hidey hole to try to catch a Bigfoot when we can prove that they exist, because everybody's going to want to be that first. Everybody's going to want to take it to that next level. And so to that end, I applaud them if that's part of the reason. I understand the logging community, the mining community, all of that, even the fishing community. If you start fishing out the areas, you're going to start taking away from the natural habitat. But it would also be great to know that we have a place where they can live and thrive, and, not like Jurassic Park, but just kind of knowing that it exists would be enough for me. and seeing that. Like I said, I'm more than happy, and I've had people offer to take me to places, but when nobody has a plan in mind yet, I haven't found the one that made me want to go. All right, I'll go with you. Dr. Melba Ketchum, I had on the show years ago talking about the fillet, I think she calls it, the palm of the hand that they were doing testing on. She took a lot of heat and it destroyed her career. And off air, she said, Dave, I can take you. I can have you brought to a place. You'll mess yourself because they will play with you. They will bull rush you and do things that will terrify you, but they're just blustering and bluffing. But I could have you taken out there. And when I asked who would take me, she told me a few names. And again, those guys did not make me feel like I would be in the best hands out in the wilderness. It's one of those kind of things. I'd love to know that they exist, but I'm okay if it means that they get to survive without our interference. And they've done a pretty remarkable job. And I believe they've been hit by cars. I believe they've been seen. We've had our little moments. Doesn't mean that, listen, I've never seen a toucan, but I know they exist, right? I can't tell you, but that's BS. There's no bird with a giant and, striped nose. It can exist. And I always remind people too, for as hard as this is for you to think about, it is still just about 200 years ago that people were laughing about gorillas and saying, you're ridiculous. A giant, hairy, man-like creature does not exist. And there's no bones. And we're not finding any of this or finding any of that. And then lo and behold, here it is. And we're seeing it and experiencing it.
And this is, where I want to go with the film, The Question of Bigfoot, is, the way I like to say it, it's like, I'll try and do this on camera. It's like there's this gradient or this sort of, pressure gauge of what they might be. So over here, you start with Gigantopithecus and relic hominid, Jeff Meldrum's experience, and from the scientific and so on. And you get all the way over here, you end up with aliens and portal hole traveling. But what I'm interested in is that every gradient step along the way has questions that need to be answered. And there are people who live within those perspectives that some of them have answers. And the goal of this film is to kind of definitively and once and for all cross that whole broad spectrum of possibilities and perspectives, answer those questions specifically and non-comically and not vaguely, but pointedly, to be able to get a full kind of 3D picture. Because up until now, a lot of films, it's just eyewitness interview, scary interview after eyewitness scary interview, cut to aerial shot of misty forest over top with creepy music, cut back to interview of Toothless Wonder and his story of his grandmother feeds them pancakes. And so I don't need to interview a whole bunch more eyewitnesses and have them tell their stories. There's already lots of that out there. But what hasn't happened has been this, to take a look at this holistically, the whole thing. I got a question from someone about, how are you going to bypass the differences of opinion, the diversity of the way where people are in this, we'll call it loosely, community of Sasquatch enthusiasts, shall we say. Well, my way is kind of comical. My answer is kind of comical. I'm going to avoid the crazies. That's it. I'm just going to stay away from the crazies because I don't need to be a poster boy for anybody's perspective on, I love Jeff Meldrum. I think he's a wonderful human being and intelligent and so on, but I'm not going to bang the drum for Jeff. I'll let Jeff do that. Let him answer these questions. I love individuals I have friends who are over on the paranormal or the portal side, and I see what they're saying. I'm not going to bang the drum for them either, but I'm going to let them bang their own drum. And this is what I feel is needed, is I can bring them all together in one film, one seriously well-produced film, one place, one time, and walk through this. And what would be the mission or the point? Because there's always got to be a mission. There's always got to be a point. So what would be the point of me doing this film? To make some money? Ain't going to happen. This Kickstarter campaign is happening because I don't have the money to do what I used to do. Those are years ago. So again, to your viewers, it's wonderful that I can talk about it, and hopefully everything from a buck to the big ticket items of coming out on an expedition with me. No, the mission or the point of this film what I would love to do is have this film end and have someone who started watching it cynically with a lot of skepticism, but mild interest, get to the end of this film and go, ooh, holy crap. Wow. That's what I want. I want that by the end of it, because the rest of us, we're all there. And but I don't want to be redundant, and I don't want to just repeat stuff I've done in Survivor Man, Bigfoot. I have new stories to tell. I will, by the way, I will go out there. It's not going to be a whole bunch of Les Stroud expeditions, because that's rushing it. And I'll never really get anything of depth. But I think what I'll do is one decent, solid expedition with this that I will film and thread it throughout. And honestly, Dave, I don't even know where I'm going to do that yet. The hotspots, as we call them, or the friends that I have, wonderful human beings who have places to go, I got to really think about this, because I don't want to waste my time and my money, my logistics. I need to go where I know that it won't make it to the film if nothing much goes on. There's no point in that.
Right.
So these are some of the missions and motivations behind me kind of coming out of the woodwork right now, if you will. Also, sorry, I'll just rant for a little while here. Also, the other
Let
thing,
me
Dave,
just remind people on today's program guide. So if you're watching live right now on YouTube, scroll down, you'll see where you can make a donation for the Kickstarter campaign. And let's blow past that so that it isn't just maybe one film, or maybe it can even be a deeper, more in-depth film, and we can get more and better graphics, better equipment, better things to push this boundary. So be a part of this. Those of you that are watching, my lovely Darklings, you want the truth. You deserve the truth. Let's give somebody who's going to take the respect and time and patience to go out and hear the spectrum, share the spectrum with us, and give us an opportunity to leave with our own ideas. And I think that's phenomenal. So again, go check out the link, and you can also find a link for Les and follow him and all of his projects, where he'll be speaking and more, right there on the website as well. Please go ahead with your rant.
I lost myself now, but that's okay, because that was good. And I would point out that, as the way Kickstarters work, if anybody hasn't seen them, is these aren't just pledges. There are super awesome rewards that you get with this, names on the film and stuff like that. And two of the things are a dinner with myself and the editor, and Tim Barry Farrell and Tim Halloran, the Bigfoot Influencers author, and then also an actual expedition with me. And if I get enough, I will do 2 separate expeditions. And to that point, I will be taking that expedition very seriously. This isn't like, well, I got them now, I got their money, come on out for a weekend, we'll go camping. Nuh-uh. I will be taking that dead seriously. So I think I guess one of the places where I was going to go is, I believe that this is a good time for me to do this, because the hoopla, if you will, of Finding Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot, and all the silly shows that came out, it's really died down. The fervor has really died down, and it's just settled, and it's kind of gone back into our world. Those of us who are interested, it's kind of just come back to us. It's not huge in the popular vein like it used to be. I like that. I don't like doing what everybody else is doing. I got out of survival when they decided to get into it, and when I said my piece with Bigfoot with those 10 episodes, I was very content. But it's been 10 years, Dave. And wow. So and in those 10 years, a lot of new perspectives have come out, and things have changed. I think there are people that are more confident and comfortable now, telling their story. Again, in terms of not so much their eyewitness accounts, but why they feel it's a this or it's a that sort of thing. And you touched on this. I like giving people due respect, no matter what it is they're about to tell me. You tell me you're certain they travel through portals. Tell me why you think that. Let's talk about that. Let's go there, but let's go there fully. Don't just throw it out there. Let's go there fully. You tell me it's a gigantic Pithecus relic hominid and this and that. All right, let's go there. And the thing is, my gift to this, if you will, is that I really know how to pull from people and create and then release a succinct story. So, again, with someone as intelligent as Jeff Meldrum, the problem is you need to listen to a 3-hour lecture with Jeff to get it all. But I can draw from that and distill. And if I am talking with other people who are, say, melodramatic, I can distill. If I
Right.
think there's magic in where they're going, but they're just a little over the top melodramatically, I can distill that out of them and capture it and bring that story to present, into the film. And that's how I do things.
Let's take one more short break. We'll come back. And I have another question regarding Survivor Man Bigfoot. At one point during the investigation, Les ends up taking some plaster castings, which appear to be a juvenile version of a Bigfoot. What kind of fears are involved of finding out that you not only are in a Bigfoot area, but perhaps where there is an entire family unit and you might find yourself between mother and child? We'll talk about that and more. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Paranormal 60. The Question of Bigfoot. That's the brand new documentary that Les Stroud is working on. Survivor Man here with us tonight, talking about the projects that he's been into, the passion behind why he's doing this, and what he's looking to find and reveal for us. As I stated before the break, during one of the episodes, you uncover some footprints. You uncover them in quite a few of the episodes that are pretty dramatic and telling. And it is hard, right? Because the cameras do not always do the justice to that footprint that you're seeing in person. But you casted what appeared to be two juvenile footprints that you even brought in, and they were fascinating enough that the expert you brought them to said, these need to be examined further. But now you're no longer just in Bigfoot territory. This may be a family area. And you have to be very cognizant, because if you find yourself between parental units and children, we know from elk and bear and other creatures how horribly wrong that can go. Did that become a concern for you at all?
Boy, I don't want to sound flippant, but no, not at all. For one thing, I don't believe, whatever that's worth, I don't believe that it would be akin to getting in between a grizzly bear and her cub. Very dangerous place to be. A moose and her calf. Very dangerous place to be. But I believe that we're dealing with something that has far, as you said, the sentience of your average dog is so extreme. But now we're dealing with something that could be even further advanced. And to be honest with you, Dave, those little baby tracks, I mean, who knows? Maybe, I don't know. See, this was a place where nobody ever goes. Families don't go. They stay away from it. The town stays away. They believe there's families of Bigfoot out there. The whole town is in acceptance in this situation, and the whole town has heard them before. And right or wrong, I create this narrative in my mind. And in that narrative, I just figure, well, if they're that comfortable enough to let their little ones come close to me, maybe I have nothing to fear here. Maybe I'm just being observed. So I look at it more that way than the pure instinctual behavior of a mother grizzly bear. I kind of felt that way. In fact, Dave, I felt kind of comforted by seeing these small tracks. Who knows? Maybe someone human, had walked there barefoot. But the tracks weren't there before when I first arrived, and they were there after when I woke up, so there's all that to take into account. And then when I casted them, it was John Bindernagel, rest in peace, that I brought them to. I mean, they may very well be the smallest, youngest casts ever set for what is perceived to be possibly the Sasquatch species, because they're these tiny little things, right? But anyway, I have answered your question. That is the truth of it. I actually relaxed because I saw, and if we want to once again compare it to the animal world, I remember swimming with humpback whales, and the mother, which was the size of a friggin' ship, allowed the young one to come close to me, and when she didn't want it any closer, it was astonishingly how she just made a couple of movements that scared me and brought the young one back. But for a good half an hour, the young one played in front of me. When I say young humpback whale, I'm talking about that's still something the size of a friggin' bus, but it was a young, right? And she was way bigger than that. And she's just hanging out down there. And it was, so I'm describing the same situation. It's like she was calm enough to know that I was not tame, but not dangerous, you know, and I was also very vulnerable. Now that's an interesting thing too, Dave, is and you haven't asked this, but if you look at, say, what's it relates to your first question, what's a technique to be around a situation like this? I think a technique of being vulnerable in this situation, not in a mountain lion situation or a polar bear situation, but in this situation, I feel from my field research that allowing yourself to be somewhat vulnerable is actually a tactic. And so where you stay, why not camp? So here, if I was giving advice to your viewers, and I'd say, why not camp in a place? Obviously, you want everything to be safe and everything, but camp in a place where you can't actually see much, but you can be seen.
Mm-hmm.
You're now very vulnerable. That may allow for an encounter faster than if you are on the precipice watching like a hawk and you can see everything. Moose walk ridgelines so they can see wolves. That's why they do it, you know. And I feel that again, in that place, in that I was very vulnerable on that river bank, where in that sandy beach where those footprints were, and I kind of feel nervy about it. It's not that I'm not spooked, but I relax and I think, okay, I'm the one who's vulnerable here. If they want to have an encounter with me, at least I'm in a position where I'm not, here's the word I was looking for, I'm not threatening.
Right. And see, that falls in line perfectly with my type of thinking, the vulnerability aspect. I was on an episode of Ghost Adventures once. They took me to this Stardust Ranch where there's portals and creatures and cryptids and aliens and ghosts, and some primal force has raped this man's woman repeatedly. And across the street on this mountainside, they would see these lights. They called them the mothership lights. And they put me up on that mountain by myself. And when I went up there, I handed over my walkie-talkie and my cell phone. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, if they're going to be able to make it across the universe or between dimensions, they're going to know if I can call for help. And if I legitimately want to have this experience, I feel like I have to let them know I'm being serious about it. And I don't want them to see that I have an out. I'm here. Let's do this. And I captured a really interesting piece of footage. I had the night vision goggles that filmed, and sure enough, I saw this light coming across the sky after I'd asked for it, and it stopped, and then bam, it was gone. So I attribute it to the fact that, like you, put myself into a vulnerable position, not just in action, right? But here, I have no way. I'm cut off. If I want this to happen, this is how it has to happen. It's either going to or not. And I think the more buffer I have between me and that experience, the less the chances are that I'm going to see this or witness it for myself. So I like that you also carry on to that aspect.
Well, you're speaking to something. See, I don't know who's watching this right now. 99.9% of them are probably interested in this phenomenon, and they're listening. Maybe because I announced it on my social media. Maybe they're just straight Survivor Man fans or fans of my music who might wanting to see this live, right? And some of them will be going, "What the? This is crazy time, right?" And what interesting is when you become a researcher, which I'm not, but when you become a researcher, when you get interested in the phenomenon, is there are two things that happen. One is that you realize it's more important that I allow myself to be vulnerable and have this experience than I get to run home and put something on YouTube. And so we finally get to a place that is there. There are still individuals who just desperately want to prove it to the world, and they want to be the one and put it on YouTube. It's not me. But a lot of us get to this place where that's not our point anymore, where there are other stories to tell. I found while making Survivor Man Bigfoot, the story of the researchers themselves became an interesting story.
Right.
The other side of this is the strange, we'll call it the paranormal side, and that is, and when I say this, and you'll get this, but when I say this, anyone who's not initiated will think, well, that's a bunch of bull crap. Like, oh, come on, that's just a cop out. And it's this. It is astonishing how often we will be in a situation that is extraordinary. Aliens, lights, or Bigfoot, or what have you. And for the life of us, we won't remember to turn on the camera. Mm-hmm. Why didn't you turn on the camera? I don't know. I didn't even think of it. When I saw lights on the mountain in Radium Spring, that, as far as I'm concerned, they were not of our species. This was insane what I saw. I had 4 or 5 cameras with me. You think I'd remember to turn one on? I didn't. I have no explanation for that. Now, anybody else listening to this from the other, it's like, what a bunch of BS. You're just making crap up so you'll make some money or something. No, we really fall into this. It's like falling into a trance. So many things like this. When it comes to the world of Sasquatch, people feeling nauseated and sick and not being able, forget pulling up your phone to try to get a shot. You're trembling,
Right.
and your brain doesn't go to, look, when I had that experience in Alaska, I was not looking for that. So I did think, ooh, I should run the camera. Problem was the camera was 40 feet away and I didn't want to move. And then when I did, it took off like a train going through the woods, so I was correct, but that's another interesting side of that is and really you have to be in this for a long time to shake your head in acknowledgement that, man, when something like this goes on, it's just for you. It's just, and you don't even remember to press record, which is embarrassing, but it's true.
But it shouldn't be, right? And that's what I've told people that are really harsh on, oh yeah, you didn't turn on your camera, survivor, man. When you have the experience, it is almost like a gift. And for the brief moment you get to witness this, I don't want to turn my head away and look back and it's gone. I want to just be there. This is for me. I'm out there for me to begin with. I want to see this. I want to have this experience. And if there's a way that I can share it with you, fantastic, but not at the expense of losing the opportunity for myself. That's where I stand. So I think a lot of people are in that position that when you are seeing it and witnessing it, you're just so enamored in that moment that nothing else matters. It isn't about proving YouTube views. It isn't about winning an award. It's just about, wow, there's still magic in this world.
Well, and there, and Joe Rogan would probably laugh at that because he did when I actually said that sort of same thing. But you know what I like in it too? There's a great moment in that film. If you haven't seen it, it's a great film, actually. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty that Ben Stiller directed. There's a moment in there where Sean Penn is going to take the photograph of the snow leopard, and he doesn't. And Ben, Walter Mitty's looking at him like, you gonna take the shot? And he just goes, no. Sometimes I just want to be in it. He goes, yeah, just the moment. And that it's the same thing. You have the experience becomes more profound than your silly YouTube video will ever be.
Right. Agreed.
It's not a cop out. It sounds like a cop out to anybody who's not interested, but I would push back and say, no, the experience is so profound that's what happens. So if, you gotta be careful what you wish for.
Right.
In this world.
Now, with the idea of Sasquatch existing, and I know we're nearing the end of our time together, and I know it's one of those things that you don't want to necessarily put your foot down and say yes, but I'm curious, in your understanding of the wild and the things that you've seen and done, are these areas producing enough food, producing enough water and shelter and places for these creatures to theoretically exist if they do?
Hands down, easy, yes. And also you can think of it other ways too. The great forests of the Northeast have returned. They've been growing for the last 250 years after they were cut down to nothing and farmland was put in and logging was mowed across. Well, for 250, 300 years, they've been growing back. And now fly over Pennsylvania sometime in Ohio. It's gorgeous. And it's miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. So the great forests of the Northeast have returned. And so there's that. Also, anywhere, like I know you can quote statistics and say, well, there's nowhere in North America that you, like the farthest you can be, I forget what it is, from a road in North America is like, they say something like 7 miles or 17 miles or something like that. That still seems weird, but that doesn't matter. Just take a flight from, I don't know, Portland, Oregon to Seattle and look down and ask the same question,
Right.
And I think the interesting thing on the biological side of this is, what would it take? Well, I think it would take small groups, probably numbering between a dozen and 20 24. Moving about, so migration, some homeland staying, some, why are they migrating? Because this is when the salmon are running. This is when the berries are ripe. This is when the elk are at their most vulnerable. This is when the weather comes in. Just general easy stuff. And full numbers, total guess, no reason for even saying it other than my experience in the wild and natural history. Probably to make it really be what it is and to have all thousands upon thousands of anecdotal references of all stripes spanning over hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years, spanning across the globe. Well, in North America alone, probably 30,000, 30 to 45,000. I think that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I don't think 20 makes sense. One is silly. And I know somebody watching this is going, yeah, well, any of this is silly, but to make it real, it would require a population like that. And so then why not, trail cams, hit by cars and so on. Well, that's part of why I'm making this movie, is to answer some of those questions, seriously answer those questions. So why don't we have one in a cage? Why aren't they seen on all the trail cams everywhere? And I do have some answers to that I'll save for the film. But these are the questions that I want to get to and answer them, so people can at the end and go, well, you made a pretty damn good case here. Okay. Maybe I'll be open to this possibility.
Well, and I love the fact that, even during the Survivor Man Bigfoot series, I love that you took every step, every new episode, took the investigation in a new way. You got to the point where you're like, let me bury this equipment so that the light and any sound is not emitting. It's not scaring off, so we're giving the camera the best shot. We're doing these things that are trying to eliminate any of the distractions. So I thought that was also a phenomenal way to investigate this, and that you were showing and taking the time to explain why this needs to happen. And I've thought, if animals can see in these different light spectrums, if we're using night vision cameras, just because you and I can't see that IR light doesn't mean that it's not like a floodlight in the forest for anything that wants to avoid it, right? I mean, there's a good chance that lighting up that area, that Bigfoot watched a wolf go through and saw that light come on. He's like, oh, nope, I'll just cut back around this way. And they're avoiding it, or they're hearing the sounds of the cameras going off and picking up on these. We forget just how adept animals are at scent and sound and vision, and how far and deep and wide they can see in the dark, that we will never be able to replicate.
Well, and we try to think of it in terms of how we are out there.
Right.
And I'm braggadocio here. I'm probably more comfortable than the average citizen in the remote wilderness. And yet, compared to a species whose whole and very existence depends on every inch of that wilderness world, if you put a beach ball the size of like a really big beach ball, I took a beach ball and you put it in my kitchen, do you not think I'm going to notice it? Right. I'm going to notice it when I walk past the window of my house before I make it to my front door. I'm going to see through it. What the heck? So think of it that way. We think we're so sneaky. I put a camera in a grouse and I bury cam it all. We think we're so sneaky. And I just have this mental image of them basically chuckling at us, just like looking at us like, oh, yeah, those guys came through. Yeah. Not that this is happening, but just, it's a tree over there's they got a camera over there, and there, and just like, I just think, however they would communicate that, realistically speaking, however that would be in their sentience, how they would communicate that. Absolutely. They know everything we've done in there. They know every branch that's been broken. We just don't exist that way. That seems like clutter to us. It's a messy, cluttery forest, and there's branches everywhere. And but to them, it's their living room. It's their kitchen. And again, you put a beach ball in my kitchen, I'm going to spot it before I'm in the kitchen. I'm going to see it. Right. And if I think that beach ball is menacing, I'm not going in the kitchen. Might be a bit of a simplistic analogy, but you get my point.
I totally do. Les, congratulations on the amazing work that you've done all these years and that you continue on trying to educate and bring people along on journeys that they may never get to do on their own. And I really do appreciate it. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I hope that you continue to do these types of shows and programs to enlighten people, educate them about these areas and about our history.
Thank you so much, David. And again, I am excited after 10 years to be back in this field. My friends in this world, the David Politis and the Jeff Meldrums and the Stacy Browns and the Tim Hallerans and Doug Hychecks. And so I still love all of these individuals, and I'm going to be checking in with all my buddies and to work with a lot of the great names in this field, including new names I don't know. And I want to present something that you, Dave, can look at and go, this is something real here. We really got something good here. And I want to be on the driving force of that. I want to be the driving force of that. And so I'm excited and I'm grateful for your viewers and listeners. And if anybody joins me on that journey, I am super grateful for that opportunity with Kickstarter. So let's go. I would love to come back on. And I hope that the next time I see you is because I've sent you a private pre-screening copy, and when you can bring me on and we can talk about it. That's what I'm hoping is the next time.
I'm looking forward to it. And when you make it back to Minnesota to see Doug Hycheck, let me know. We'll go out for a beer and talk strange experiences.
There's a man I respect. There's a guy who's done some really great work.
Great guy. Thank you so much, Les. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave.
All right, folks, we have a link again in today's program guide. So whether you're listening to the program after it's aired live or you're still watching right now on the live YouTube stream, there's a link here. If you're watching on any of the social media, there's a link here. Follow the link, make a donation. Let's blow past the donation, help Les so that he can continue to make projects like this and seek the truth. That's what you all ask for. You want somebody who's going to take these things seriously, go out there and be a part of this, to put himself in that environment to get the answers. This is the guy we want leading that charge. So make sure you go make that donation. I hope you enjoyed the program as much as I did. Aside from getting past the fact that we got to talk to Survivor Man and talk to him about Bigfoot and lights that he sees in the wilderness, it's really a fascinating element to see just how close we all really are in our fascination with the strange and unusual. I hope that the darkness of this world is just a little bit lighter with the information we share here. And I thank all of you, my darklings around the world, for the time that you gave me tonight. I'll be back again with you Wednesday right here on the home for all the best in paranormal programming. I'm Dave Schrader, and this is my Paranormal 60.